My Struggle to Learn English, Part 1, Introduction. Hello my lovely learners, welcome back to the channel. Today I want to share something very personal and very real with you. This video is not just about English grammar, vocabulary, or pronunciation. This video is about my journey, my struggle to learn English. You see, many people look at fluent speakers and imagine they were born with the skill. But that is not true at all. Behind every fluent English speaker, there is a story of fear, mistakes, embarrassment, and practice. And today, I will open up my own story for you. I will take you back to my childhood, to my school days, when I couldn't even say a simple English sentence without my heart racing. I will tell you about my teenage years, when I watched my friends speak confidently while I sat quietly. So, in the next few minutes, we will go through my journey step by step. And while I tell you my struggles, I will also give you lessons that you can apply in your own English learning journey. Why am I sharing this? Now, you may wonder, why am I sharing all this? Why not just teach grammar, or vocabulary, or pronunciation? The reason is simple. English is not just a subject, it is an emotion. It is about confidence, opportunity, identity. And if I only give you rules, you may not feel inspired. But if I share my struggles, my mistakes, and my small victories, you will see that learning English is possible for anyone. So, stay with me till the end of this series. I promise you, by the time we finish, you will not only learn new tips and techniques, but you will also feel motivated. You will feel that yes, I can do this too. Because, remember, fluency is not about being perfect. Fluency is about being brave enough to try, again and again. Alright, let's begin the journey. Let's travel back to my childhood, when English first entered my life. Not as a friend, but as my greatest fear. That's where it all started. And that is what I will share with you in Part 2, my childhood struggles. Part 2, Childhood Struggles. When I think back to my childhood, one of the strongest memories I have is fear. Fear of being asked to speak English in class. Fear of standing up in front of everyone and making a mistake. At home, we spoke our mother tongue. At school, the textbooks were in English, but real conversation, that was a different story. And every day in class, English felt like a mountain I could never climb. The classroom moment. I remember one particular day very clearly. I was in class, sitting quietly in the corner, when my English teacher suddenly called my name. She said, "Please stand up and read the paragraph on page number 32. My heart started beating faster. My hands began to shake. I stood up, holding the book, and I tried to read, word by word, very slowly. The problem was, I didn't really understand what I was reading. My classmates stared at me. Some of them smiled, some of them giggled. And that moment made me feel so small, so embarrassed. I thought to myself, why am I so bad at this? Why can't I read like the others? Memorizing grammar, failing in speaking. As a child, I worked very hard. I memorized grammar rules. Present tense, past tense, future tense. I could write them all in exams. I scored okay in written tests. Teachers thought I was fine, but the truth was, when it came to real speaking, I froze. It was like my brain had two different boxes. One box was full of grammar rules and textbook sentences. The other box, the speaking box, was empty. Have you ever felt like that? You know the rules, but when it's time to talk, your tongue gets stuck. That was me, every single day. Embarrassment in class. There was another moment I'll never forget. One day, the teacher asked a question in English. I knew the answer in my own language, but not in English. I stayed silent. The teacher got angry and said, "Why are you always quiet? Don't you study?" The class laughed again. My ears turned red. I felt like crying. After that day, I stopped raising my hand. Even when I knew the answer, I kept quiet. Because silence felt safer than making mistakes. Feeling of English is for others. As a child, I slowly started to believe that English was not for me. English was for the smart kids. English was for the children who had educated parents, who watched English cartoons, who read storybooks at home. I thought, maybe I will never learn. Maybe English is not part of my life. And that belief stayed with me for a long time. It stopped me from trying. It stopped me from enjoying learning. Now, I want to ask you, did you have a similar experience in school? Did you also feel scared, or embarrassed, or left behind? If yes, then I want you to know something very important. You are not alone. Many learners around the world share this exact struggle. The fear of speaking in front of others, the laughter of classmates, the silence in exams. These are not just my memories, they are our memories. And the good news is, these struggles do not define our future. They are only the beginning of the journey. So, childhood gave me my first taste of fear with English. But as I grew older and entered my teenage years, the struggle changed. It became less about teachers, and more about friends, self-image, and confidence. In part 3, I will tell you about my teenage struggles, the years when I wanted to fit in, when I envied my friends' confidence, and when English became a wall between me and the world. Part 3, Teenage Struggles. Teenage years are difficult for almost everyone. It's the time when we want to be accepted, we want to belong, we want to be cool. And for me, English became the one thing that decided whether I felt confident or completely invisible. Friends who spoke better. I had classmates and friends who spoke English so naturally. They would crack jokes, answer questions in class, and even talk to teachers in English without hesitation. I remember sitting with them during lunch break. They would suddenly switch to English, laugh, and continue their conversations. I wanted so badly to join in, but I just sat there, quiet, nodding, pretending I understood everything. Inside, I felt jealous. I thought, why can they speak so well? What's wrong with me? It wasn't just about language. It was about identity. They looked confident, intelligent, modern, and I felt small, trying and failing. Of course, I tried. I tried to speak. Sometimes, I forced myself to say a sentence in English. But the moment I opened my mouth, my mind went blank. Or I made a mistake in grammar, or pronunciation, and my friends would giggle. It wasn't their fault, they didn't mean to hurt me. But for me, every laugh felt like a knife. It confirmed my biggest fear, I'm not good enough. So, slowly, I stopped trying. I built a wall of silence. Exams, writing versus speaking. In exams, I was average. I could memorize essays, I could write answers, I could manage grammar. On paper, I was not the worst. But when it came to orals, viva exams, or interviews with teachers, I failed miserably. One day, I had an English viva. The teacher asked me, "Can you tell me about your hobbies?" I had prepared. I had written down a paragraph about my hobbies. But when I tried to speak, my voice cracked. I said, my hobby is," and then nothing came out. The teacher waited, looked disappointed, and gave me very low marks. That day, I felt crushed. I realized that no matter how much grammar I memorized, speaking was a completely different game. Avoiding social situations. As a teenager, I started avoiding situations where English was necessary. There were competitions in school, debates, elocution, storytelling. I never participated, not because I didn't want to, but because the fear of speaking in English was too strong. Even in small group discussions, if the teacher asked us to speak in English, I stayed quiet. This avoidance became a habit. I told myself, Better to stay silent than to make mistakes. But what I didn't realize was, by staying silent, I was missing opportunities to grow. Dreams versus reality. I had dreams. I wanted to be confident like others. I wanted to stand on stage, hold a microphone, and speak without fear. I imagined myself speaking fluently, and people clapping for me. But the reality was the opposite. I was shy, insecure, and scared of English. This gap between dream and reality was painful. Every time I saw a friend shine in English, I felt a sharp reminder, you can't do this. Deep emotions. Teenage years are supposed to be about fun, about making friends, about exploring life. But for me, so much of it was controlled by my weakness in English. I laughed less, I spoke less, I participated less. All because I carried this invisible weight, the fear of English. And maybe you also felt the same in your teenage years. Maybe you wanted to join a conversation, but you held back. Maybe you wanted to answer in class, but you stayed silent. Maybe you wanted to shine, but you hid in the shadows. If yes, then you know exactly how painful it is. And I want you to know, you are not alone. Many people carry these memories, even as adults. So, my teenage years were full of silence, avoidance, and self-doubt. But then came adulthood. And adulthood is less forgiving. In school and college, you can hide. But in the workplace, in interviews, in social situations, English is everywhere, and avoiding it becomes impossible. In part 4, I will share my adult struggles. The times when English didn't just embarrass me, it limited my opportunities, my confidence, and even my dreams. Part 4. Adult struggles. As a child, I could hide my fear of English behind exams. As a teenager, I could hide it behind silence. But when I became an adult, hiding was no longer an option because English was everywhere. In interviews, in the workplace, in travel, in social life. And suddenly, my weakness became very visible. Workplace challenges. I still remember my very first job interview. I had prepared answers in my own language. I had confidence in my skills. But the moment the interviewer asked in English, everything collapsed. The question was simple, tell me about yourself. And I knew the answer. I had practiced. But when I tried to speak, my tongue twisted, my grammar broke, my confidence vanished. I mumbled, myself. Subha. Studying. The interviewer looked at me politely, but I could feel the rejection in his eyes. That day, I realized, English is not just a language. In the workplace, English decides whether you get the job or not. Emails and meetings. Even when I got a job, English haunted me. Writing emails took forever. A simple 2-line email, I would type, delete, type again, check grammar apps, and still feel nervous before pressing send. In meetings, colleagues would discuss everything in English. I would sit quietly, afraid of making a mistake. Sometimes, I understood only half of what they said. And when my turn came to speak, I used the shortest sentences possible. It wasn't that I didn't have ideas. I had good ideas. But English kept them locked inside me. My colleagues looked confident. I looked weak. Colleagues and pronunciation. One of the hardest moments was when colleagues laughed at my pronunciation. I once pronounced receipt with a P sound, and they giggled. Another time, I said developed incorrectly, and someone corrected me sharply. Now, they probably didn't mean to hurt me. But every correction, every laugh, every raised eyebrow made me more nervous. I started avoiding English even more. Travel struggles. English struggles followed me outside the workplace too. At airports, when the staff spoke quickly in English, I panicked. I nodded even when I didn't fully understand. Once, in a hotel, I wanted to ask for an extra towel, but I didn't know the right words. So, I just stayed quiet. It's such a small thing, but in those moments, I felt powerless. Something as basic as communication made me feel less than others. Family and social life. At home, with family, I felt another kind of pressure. My younger relatives and kids started learning English faster than me. They spoke confidently, used new words, and sometimes even corrected me. Instead of feeling proud, I felt embarrassed. I thought, how can I guide them if I myself struggle? In social gatherings, I avoided conversations where English might come up. If someone asked me to introduce myself, I felt nervous all over again, just like in school. Silent suffering. All of this created a cycle of silent suffering. On the outside, I smiled. I pretended everything was fine. But inside, I carried shame and insecurity. English had become a barrier, not just to communication, but to my confidence, my growth, and even my happiness. And maybe you have felt this too. Maybe you lost an opportunity because of English. Maybe you avoided a social event. Maybe you nodded along in a conversation without understanding fully. If yes, then you know how heavy this struggle feels. It's not just about words, it's about dignity. So, adulthood made my struggle with English even clearer. It was no longer just about embarrassment, it was about survival, career, opportunities, and respect. But the hardest part of my journey was still ahead, the emotional low points. The times when I almost gave up completely. In part 5, I will share those moments of deep frustration and self-doubt, when English made me question my own worth, and when I felt like giving up forever. Part 5, Emotional Low Points. In life, there are struggles we can laugh about later. But then there are struggles that cut deep, that stay with us, that make us question our own worth. For me, English became that kind of struggle. It was no longer just about speaking or not speaking. It became about who I was, about my confidence, my dignity, my future. And honestly, there were times when I almost gave up completely. The comparison trap. One of the lowest points came when I compared myself with others. I saw friends, colleagues, even younger students, speaking English fluently, confidently, freely. They made presentations, they cracked jokes, they spoke with teachers and managers without fear. And then there was me, silent, nervous, avoiding eye contact. I used to ask myself, why can't I do this? Am I less intelligent? Am I less capable? These questions hurt more than any mistake. They made me feel small, invisible, unworthy. The pain of silence. There were days when I wanted to speak up. In meetings, in social events, in family gatherings, I had thoughts, opinions, ideas. But I stayed silent. And silence is heavy. It feels like carrying a stone in your chest. You want to speak, but you can't. And after a while, people stop noticing you. They stop asking for your opinion. That silence hurt more than words. The humiliation. I'll share one painful memory. In a group, someone asked me a question in English. I tried to answer, but my sentence broke halfway. My grammar was wrong, my pronunciation was off. People corrected me. Some laughed, others looked away. That moment stayed with me. I replayed it in my head for weeks. At night, I thought about it again and again, until I felt completely useless. That was the moment I thought, maybe I should just stop trying. Maybe English is not for me. The decision to quit. Yes, there were times I actually thought of quitting. I told myself, I can live without English. Many people do. I'll just focus on my work, my family, my local language. Why should I torture myself like this? And for a while, I did stop trying. I stopped practicing, I stopped reading, I avoided situations where English was required. But inside, I wasn't happy. Because deep down, I knew the truth. Without English, my opportunities were limited. My growth was limited. Even my confidence in myself was limited. It felt like I was living in a small cage, while the world outside was open and free. Maybe you've been there too. Maybe you've felt the pain of silence, the humiliation of mistakes, the heaviness of comparison. Maybe you've thought of giving up as well. If you have, then let me tell you something. Those low points are not the end. They are simply part of the journey. Because sometimes, we need to hit rock bottom before we find the courage to rise again. And that's exactly what happened to me. After those emotional low points, after those moments of despair, something inside me began to change. I realized that English was not a monster. It was simply a skill, and skills can be learned. In part 6, I'll share those turning points. The moments when I slowly began to see hope, when I realized that I could improve, and when I took my first small steps towards change. Part 6, Realizations and Turning Points. After months, maybe even years, of struggling, failing, and feeling small, something inside me began to change. I realized that English was not a monster. It was not something that would always make me feel ashamed or left behind. It was simply a skill that I could learn, practice, and improve. And that realization changed everything. Accepting English as a skill. Before this point, I had treated English as a magical ability, something only certain people could do. I thought you had to be born fluent, born confident, born smart to speak English well. But then I understood the truth. English is like riding a bicycle or learning to cook. You learn step by step. You practice. You make mistakes. You try again. It doesn't matter where you start. What matters is that you start. Small victories. My first small victory was simple. I greeted someone at work in English, and they responded kindly. Not perfectly, but enough to communicate. It was such a tiny moment, yet it felt huge. I thought, wow, I can actually do this. Then I tried a short conversation with a friend. I made mistakes, but they smiled and continued talking with me. I realized that mistakes were not deadly, they were just part of learning, watching others learn. I started noticing other people around me, people who were learning English at my age, or even later in life. They were making mistakes, practicing every day, and gradually improving. That observation was motivating. I thought, if they can do it, why not me? It gave me hope. Hope that I could rise above my fear and finally start speaking with confidence. Motivation from family and work. My family and work became motivation, not pressure. I wanted to communicate better with colleagues. I wanted to explain ideas clearly. I wanted to guide my younger relatives and kids without hesitation. Instead of fear, I started feeling purpose. English was no longer an enemy, it was a tool. A tool that could help me grow, connect, and succeed. First steps toward change. So I began taking small steps. I spoke one sentence in English every day. I wrote small notes, emails, and diary entries in English. I listened to English podcasts, even if I didn't understand everything. I repeated phrases aloud in front of a mirror, practicing pronunciation. These small steps didn't solve everything overnight, but they built my confidence. Slowly, my fear began to shrink. I want you to understand something very important. Turning points don't always come with fireworks. Often, they come quietly, with small realizations. A single thought, I can do this, can change your whole journey. A tiny action, speaking one sentence, can start a snowball of improvement. If you're struggling with English today, your turning point is waiting. It may be a small conversation, a short email, or a few minutes of listening. Start there, and you'll see the change begin. So, after realizing that English is a skill, and after taking those small steps, I tried several methods to improve. Some worked, some failed. In part 7, I will share the methods I tried, the mistakes I made, and what eventually worked for me. This is where the learning really begins. Practical tips and experiences you can apply today. Part 7. Methods tried and failures. After realizing that English is a skill and taking those first small steps, I was excited. I thought, now I can finally learn properly. And that's when I tried almost everything. Some things worked, and some things didn't work at all. Let me take you through my journey of trial and error, so you can avoid my mistakes and save time. 1. Grammar books and memorization. The first thing I did was buy grammar books. Big books. Thick books. Rules for tenses, prepositions, articles, everything. I memorized every rule, did every exercise. I could write perfect sentences in exams. But the problem, when I tried to speak, I forgot everything. I realized that memorizing rules is not enough. Speaking is not just about grammar, it's about communication. Lesson: grammar helps, but it alone won't make you fluent. 2. Watching movies with subtitles. Next, I thought movies would help me. So I started watching English movies with subtitles. At first, it was fun. I repeated lines. I tried copying accents. I felt like I was learning, but after a few weeks, I realized I wasn't really improving. I understood words, but I couldn't form sentences naturally. Sometimes, I sounded robotic, like I was just repeating lines. Lesson: watching movies is helpful for listening, but alone, it won't improve your speaking. 3. Copying accents and pronunciation. I even tried copying accents, British, American, even Indian English accents. I spent hours in front of the mirror, repeating phrases. The problem: it sounded unnatural. I wasn't comfortable. People could tell I was trying too hard. I felt fake. Lesson: accent practice is okay, but don't focus on sounding perfect. Focus on clear and confident communication. 4. Expensive classes. I joined expensive English classes too. Teachers were good, lessons were structured. I learned new vocabulary, idioms, and pronunciation tips. But still, I struggled to speak outside the classroom. Why? Because practice in real life is different from practice in class. Lesson: classes help, but speaking regularly is more important than spending money on fancy courses. 5. Overthinking mistakes. One of the biggest mistakes I made was overthinking. I would plan sentences in my head for 5 minutes, then hesitate to speak. By the time I spoke, the moment was gone, and sometimes, I didn't even speak at all. Lesson: don't overthink. Speak, even with mistakes. Mistakes are learning steps, not failures. Maybe you are trying some of these methods too. Maybe you've bought grammar books, watched movies, joined classes, copied accents, and still feel stuck. If yes, then I want you to know, it's normal. Almost every learner goes through this stage. The key is to combine methods, practice consistently, and not give up. Every failure teaches you something. After failing many times, I finally found the methods that actually worked for me, the ones that helped me speak confidently and enjoy learning. In Part 8, I will share my breakthrough moments, the exact steps that helped me improve my English, the moments that gave me confidence, and the strategies you can start using today. Part 8, Breakthrough Moments. After years of struggle, failure, embarrassment, and overthinking, something amazing happened. I had my first breakthrough moments, the moments when I realized that I could speak English, and I could communicate confidently. These weren't big, dramatic moments. They were small, simple victories. But together, they changed everything. First real conversation success. My first breakthrough came when I tried to have a short conversation with a friend. Just a few sentences. I said, "Hello, how are you?" And to my surprise, my friend responded naturally. I continued, adding a few sentences, and I realized, I'm actually speaking in English. It wasn't perfect. I made grammar mistakes. My pronunciation wasn't great. But it didn't matter. The important thing was that I communicated. That feeling, that small victory, gave me hope. I thought, maybe I can actually do this. Speaking with kids and family. Another breakthrough was speaking with my younger relatives and kids. Instead of being afraid of making mistakes, I started teaching them small phrases. I repeated sentences aloud. We played simple English games. By helping them, I also helped myself. I realized that learning becomes fun when you teach, when you practice naturally, and when you don't fear mistakes. This was a major turning point. Learning English wasn't just about work or exams anymore. It became a joyful activity, writing daily notes and journals. I also started writing short notes and keeping a diary in English. Every day, I wrote a few sentences about my thoughts, my day, or even things I learned. At first, I had to check the dictionary constantly. My sentences were simple, almost childlike. But after a few weeks, I noticed improvement. Writing made speaking easier. I began forming sentences more naturally. My confidence slowly grew. Listening and repeating. Another breakthrough came with listening and repeating. I listened to English podcasts, news, and even YouTube channels. I paused, repeated sentences aloud, and tried to copy natural intonation. This helped me understand sentence rhythm, pronunciation, and new words. Gradually, I felt less nervous while speaking. My ears were training my mouth, and it worked. Realizing mistakes are okay. One of the biggest breakthroughs wasn't a technique, it was a mindset change. I realized that mistakes are not the enemy. Mistakes are proof that you are learning. Every time I mispronounced a word, forgot a tense, or said something awkward, I laughed, corrected myself, and tried again. This mindset removed a huge weight off my shoulders. Suddenly, speaking English became less scary. Combination of methods. My breakthrough wasn't from a single method. It was the combination. Speaking small sentences daily, writing journals, listening and repeating, practicing with kids and family, accepting mistakes as part of learning. All these steps, repeated consistently, built my confidence and ability. I want you to understand this. Breakthroughs don't happen overnight. They happen gradually. It might start with a single sentence, then 2 sentences, then a small conversation. And soon, you will notice, you can actually speak English. The key is consistency, patience, and courage to try, again and again. Even small steps matter. Every attempt is progress. So, after experiencing these breakthrough moments, I finally felt ready to share the practical lessons I learned, the tips, methods, and daily habits that helped me truly improve. In part 9, I will give you all the practical lessons, strategies, and advice you can use to make real progress in English, without fear, without stress, and with confidence. Part 9. Practical lessons for viewers. After years of struggle, failure, and breakthrough moments, I finally learned some practical lessons that helped me improve my English, and they can help you too. In this part, I'll share the exact strategies, daily habits, and tips that worked for me. 1. Start small. Speak daily. Don't wait to be perfect. Start speaking in English every day. Even one sentence counts. Greet your family or friends in English. Describe simple things around you. This is my cup, or I am eating lunch. 2. Don't fear mistakes. Mistakes are part of learning. When I stopped fearing mistakes, I improved faster. If you mispronounce a word, correct yourself and move on. You use wrong grammar. Don't panic. Focus on communicating. Laugh at small mistakes. It makes learning enjoyable. 3. Listen actively. Listening helps your brain absorb sentence structures, pronunciation, and vocabulary naturally. Watch English videos, YouTube channels, or podcasts. Repeat sentences aloud to mimic pronunciation. Listen to songs and try to understand lyrics. The more you listen, the more natural your speaking will become. 4. Read and write regularly. Reading builds vocabulary and sentence patterns. Writing reinforces them. Keep a small journal in English. Write about your day, thoughts, or goals. Read short articles, stories, or captions in English. Highlight new words, learn them, and use them in sentences. Writing is like training wheels for speaking, it gives your brain confidence. 5. Practice with real people. Practice speaking with people, even if it's uncomfortable at first. Talk to friends, family, or colleagues in English. Join online groups or language exchange communities. Start with simple conversations, greetings, asking questions, sharing small ideas. Real interaction is the fastest way to gain confidence. Record yourself speaking and listen. Small daily practice is better than long, rare sessions. Remember, consistency is the key. 6. Use technology wisely. Apps and online tools can help if used properly. Language apps for vocabulary and grammar practice. Speech recognition tools to check pronunciation. YouTube channels to learn idioms, phrases, and real-life conversations. The trick is, use them daily, but don't rely only on apps. Practice with real-life situations too. 7. Make learning fun. When learning is fun, you stick with it. Play English games with kids or friends. Watch cartoons, movies, or shows in English. Sing songs, repeat dialogues, or narrate stories. The more fun you make it, the easier it becomes to stay consistent. 8. Build a growth mindset. Believe that improvement is possible. Celebrate small wins. One sentence, one conversation, one email. Accept that fluency is a journey, not a destination. Compare yourself only to yourself yesterday, not others. This mindset will keep you motivated even on tough days. 9. Combine all methods. The breakthrough comes when you combine multiple habits. Speak daily plus listen actively. Read plus write. Practice with people plus use technology. Accept mistakes plus stay motivated. Consistency and combination create real results. So, if you are struggling today, remember, small steps, daily practice, courage to speak, and joy in learning. That's the path to fluency. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to try, consistently, and keep moving forward. Conclusion and motivation. My journey from fear to confidence to cares. I made mistakes. I failed. I almost gave up. But step by step, I improved. And you can too. If I can do it, anyone can. Your English learning journey starts now. Speak one sentence, write one note, listen one podcast, and slowly, you will see yourself becoming confident and fluent. Thank you for watching this series. I hope my journey inspires you, and I hope my lessons help you. Remember, fluency is not about perfection, it's about courage, practice, and persistence.